Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome back to our channel where we make English language learning simple, smart and yes, even fun. Today we are diving into speech writing part 2. If you have already seen part 1, you know we have covered the format, structure, language and tone of speech writing. But today we will do a deep exam focused walkthrough of a speech example. I will read short extracts, explain how each piece works, and show you how to use techniques in order to score higher. Ready? Let's go. So, the very first thing that we have to refresh in our minds is format and structure. We are going to do two things in this regard, structure and persuasive devices. Before we look at the examples itself, it is very important to refresh your memory. The format or structure of the speech writing usually follows the order: greeting, introduction, stating the purpose, body paragraphs, where persuasive devices shine, and finally the conclusion. Now, the language features are equally important. Some of the key persuasive devices we will see in the action are fillers and ellipses, inclusive pronouns like we and our, rhetorical questions that make the audience think, repetition for emphasis, contraction and explanation marks to keep the tone lively and convincing. Okay, keep this in mind because as we read the example, I will stop and point out exactly where each device is used. Just to look at the question first, we have already seen this question, by the way, in our very first video, where we have highlighted the use of purpose, which you find in the very first question. Imagine you are a student at a school which is considering introducing e-sport as a part of the school curriculum. So the purpose is you have to give a speech on whether you want the esports to be introduced as a part of the sports curriculum at school or not. And then you have audience, which is the school community, and your genre is speech. Write the speech you give to your school community, giving your views in your speech. You should evaluate the views and attitude both about esports given in both texts. Give your own views based on what you have read about whether esports should be offered in the schools. This basically questions the same question which was used in the part 2 of the directed writing series. Over here, the discursive, argumentative, and persuasive essay features come into play when we are evaluating, by the way, the two bullet points. You have to base your speech on what you have read in two texts. You will be offered two texts. I have already talked about it in my previous video. But be careful to use your own words. Address both of the bullet points and write about 250 to 350 words. Now, starting with the very first persuasive device, that is greeting, introduction and purpose. Of course, it is a part of the structure at the same time, and I will show you what persuasive features come into play over here. So let's begin with the opening. Good morning, my dear fellow students and respected faculty members. I am Ali Affan of grade 11 and I feel immense pleasure and a little nervousness standing here on the stage before you all to shed light on a very important matter, the inclusion of esports in our school curriculum. Now, over here, the most important element is definitely the greeting itself. How do we greet? With the awareness of the audience. Of course, the register is correctly used over here. The speaker opens with a formal yet inclusive greeting to establish the rapport. My dear fellow students and respected faculty members. Fellow student shows that it's a kind of a warmth, and of course, the respected faculty members shows the respect for the faculty. Please note stating name and grade. By the way, Ali Affan, the name and the grade is a very important factor in this regard because the speaker establishes himself or positions himself as a peer and a stakeholder. This appeals to the audience trust. Who is the audience? Definitely the students and the respected faculty members. Also, correct tone is established over here from the very first line. The mix of immense pleasure and a little nervousness. Immense pleasure and a little nervousness not only makes it human, makes it appear humanized, rather it makes us voice more authentic, not pompous. That is important as the speech must be written as it is spoken. Purpose is clearly stated over here. The clause to shed light on a very important matter explicitly signals the speech's intent. The intent is that he is going to speak about inclusion of esports in the sports curriculum. Next comes the rhetorical question. Rhetorical question is very important, by the way, because over here the writer shows that he's against the inclusion at the same time. This is the introduction of your intent, adding to the intent. It is the evaluative part where you are showing that where you are going to lean in the speech. I'm going to read this now. Have you ever imagined, yes, really imagined playing video games in school not as a hobby but as a subject? Interesting, isn't it? But at the same time, troubling. Today, I stand before you not just with facts, but with deep concerns, with heartfelt worries about whether this integration of technology in sports truly belongs into our school. Now, the rhetorical question. Rhetorical question is a very, very important feature. It makes the rhetorical question is not something that audience is expected to answer, but it makes them pause and reflect. It also adds curiosity and creates empathy with the speaker's doubt. He is doubtful that whether this should be a part of the school curriculum or not. That single word, by the way, troubling. It signals that speaker is not in the favor of adding esports to the school curriculum. So over here, a sense of doubt is established, which is coupled with the use of rhetorical question. So it brings the stance of the writer or speaker over here, of course, more forcefully. This is a clever writing because instead of bluntly saying that I am against it straight away, the speaker eases the audience with curiosity before revealing their critical viewpoint. In other words, the writer is preparing the audience to think critically about the drawbacks rather than celebrating the idea with the help of the rhetorical question and with the use of the word troubling. Now comes the very important feature, fillers and ellipses. I'm going to read it out. Let's be fair. Esports. This is basically the filler, and these three dots are the ellipses. This global phenomenon is undeniably huge. The revenue it generates is astonishing, and yes, professional players display agility, quick reflexes, cleverness, and sportsmanship, just like traditional athletes. But here is the question: can we really equate sitting for hours on a chair with the physical rigor of running, jumping, or sweating it out on a field? Schools are entrusted with our health, our growth, our well-being. How does prompting a sedentary life fits into that responsibility? Over here, fillers and ellipses are used cleverly. Fillers like and ellipses both simulate, sorry, not stimulate, rather they simulate. It means that they copy or they mimic the spoken language, making the speech sound natural and trustworthy, by the way. This is a very important this is a very important feature. The speaker appears reflected over here rather than rehearsed. So whenever you use fillers and ellipses, it shows that you are buying time to think. In other words, it makes the speaker that he is reflecting or thinking about the problem on his feet. So use of fillers and ellipses make it feel less like an essay. It does not look like an argumentative essay any longer. Rather, it makes the reader feel that it is more a speech. And in other words, it sounds like a real person is speaking on stage. That makes a big difference between speech writing and formal essay writing. You must use it, by the way. If it is a formal speech, once or twice would be suffice. But in the informal speech, you can bring it in every paragraph but once only. Don't inundate it or don't use it too much. That will also fail the purpose of using it at the same time. Then we are going to identify the persuasive devices over here in this small paragraph. And then there is the cost, high-end computers, gaming chairs, constant upgrades. How would schools afford all that? And even if they did, what happens when today's popular game is tomorrow's obsolete one? Students could master one game only to realize it no longer matters. Where is the fairness in that? Where is that where is the parity? The speaker now adds another persuasive layer over here. Here we see two devices, the rhetorical question, how would schools afford all that? And then we have ellipses over here. Ellipses that create, by the way, a sense of suspense. These two combined factors or the devices force the listener or make the listener to consider the downsides of the esports seriously. Then, most important feature, inclusive pronoun. By the way, inclusive pronoun was used throughout in the previous part of the speech, this speech as well, but I'm highlighting it over here. I have underlined it, and of course, I have colored it pink. I'm going to read it out. Sure, teamwork, cooperation, and coordination are great, but let's be real. Alongside all the good stuff, esports culture can also be or can also push some unhealthy habits. We are talking energy drinks, staying up away too late, fast food runs. Do we really want our friends, our classmates, or even ourselves to think that is normal in our schools? There is another device over here, but I have made a separate slide on this. Let's consider the inclusive pronouns. This actually helps the speaker to draw the attention of the audience very quickly. Why? Because the use of let us, we are, ourselves draws listeners into an argument. It builds collective responsibility. That is the use of inclusive pronoun makes the audience agree with you. They make them feel part of your own argument. In other words, the speaker uses inclusive pronoun to involve the audience and create a collective moral stance. Moral stance is shared over here. So, using, by the way, make the reader immediately draw into your argument with they immediately agree with you in simple words. Repetition was used in the previous one as well, but over here it is used more forcefully, and I'm going to show you this. I'm going to read it out first. Yes, esports connect cultures. Yes, they promote global communication. Yes, they can teach some values, but a very important part over here because it's repeated to enforce the stance. But I repeat, but should schools not primarily prepare us for real life challenges? Should school not equip us with practical skills that will help us step confidently into the future? Well, dear friends, I too play games. I enjoy them, but I have realized through experience that they belong to our leisure, not our lessons, not in classroom, not in curricula. I have forgotten, by the way, to highlight this. But keep this in mind. This is also an important part of repetition. So let us remember school must shape minds, not screens. School must inspire movements, not more sitting. School must guide us towards a balance, not addiction. If you can see that. The repetition of yes, yes, yes first, it lulls the audience into agreement before the emphatic but. This but is very important because it is showing that I'm going to take a sharp turn in the focus of my argument. I'm going to change the argument over here. This structural device makes the speaker's final question feel more forceful and powerful. Should schools not equip us with practical skills that will help us step confidently into the future? The use of but, yes first, yes, I shows a positive side, then but shows a powerful stance which is coupled with the this rhetorical question. It makes my message reach home more forcefully. Now, I would suggest that you should think of famous speeches like Martin Luther King's, in which he repeats the phrase, I have a dream. And this phrase has been used repeatedly in so many other speeches just to emphasize how important the repetition is. So, this is a very important technique, and you must employ it when you are writing your speech. Finally, G, the contractions and exclamation. So, with contraction and explanation, I'm going to read it out. With these words, I will wrap up esports. While exciting, just shouldn't be part of our school's curriculum. Let's enjoy our games in our free time, but let us live our education in real time with passion and purpose. Thank you all for listening. Let's make the most of our learning together. Now, this is a very important technique. Notice the contraction like shouldn't. It was, by the way, contractions were there throughout the speech. I did not highlight them because I wanted to make a separate slide on it. But contraction is a very important feature. We tend to contract the words when we are speaking in real life. So, you must use contractions if you really want to show your strength as a speech writer. So the contractions like I'll, let's, and then the mark of exclamation at the end. All these, by the way, make the ending sound strong, confident, and impactful. Remember, your last word must leave the audience thinking. They're the final note of your speech, so make it powerful. Over here, it says, so let's make most of our learning together. So it's very important that esports. Esports, because he says that it should not be a part of the school curriculum, and he puts it very forcefully with the help of all the devices. I'm going to show you, repeat the devices now. First is definitely the fillers and ellipses, then comes inclusive pronouns, rhetorical questions, repetition, contraction, and mark of exclamation. So, what is happening over here? A speech should follow a clear, by the way, structure. We also included the very first thing, greeting, then we came to introduction, purpose, body, and conclusion at the same time. And the persuasive devices I've already used, see, by the way, put them up in the slide, and I have already shown you the use of it throughout this speech. So it is very important that you use these persuasive devices to keep your language natural, real, engaging, and suitable for speaking aloud, not stiff or essay like. If you don't use these persuasive devices, your argument will look more like an argumentative essay rather than a speech. So I have told you earlier that if you do not add persuasive devices which are specific to a genre, your answer will only be based upon discursive features and argumentative feature. For persuasive features, you need to use all these devices. So, if you can master this balance, you will be well prepared for your IGCSE First Language English exam. I hope that you have enjoyed learning with me, and thank you for listening to me. Allah.